Now, I don't mean anything mean by this, or I don't mean to insult anybody. I mean no offense when I say this, but, I was watching a clip from last night's Monday Night Raw where you had basically it was a clip of Roman Reigns taking on Kane and Seth Rollins in a 2-on-1 handicap match. And I read some of the comments, and, some people are saying that Roman Reigns is getting booed already, and yet you have some people saying it's not booing. They're basically going with what he does, the Superman punch, and maybe the spear, or the flying dropkick he does on the outside. And you know what this keeps telling me? I mentioned this in my replies to OTRS Central and Solomonster. But you know what this tells me, folks? This tells me, and I'm not trying to be mean about this, but this tells me that indie wrestling and major indie wrestling, basically indie wrestling as a whole, overall indie wrestling, has pretty much spoiled everybody. Overall indie wrestling and MMA, to some degree, has spoiled has spoiled everybody, all of the wrestling fans, the IWC, the YWC, the FWC, anybody that when they watch somebody in TNA or they watch somebody in WWE or wherever, and they see the guy getting pushed to the moon, getting rocketed to the moon, as they like to put it. At first they like the guy, then they turn on the guy. Why? Because he's not a pure pro wrestler. And it's like, when I look at this, I almost want to laugh because I'm thinking, do these people not understand the difference and the distinctions between WWE and some of these overall indie wrestling promotions, major to small or small to major? Do they not understand that? I mean, WWE is not like, let's say, New Japan. WWE is not like AAA, or CMLL, or some of the small independent promotions out there, or the mid-major, or the mid-independent promotions, or the major independent promotions. They're not like that. They're different. How many times did WWE, as much as we hate what they do sometimes, and believe me, there's a lot of stuff that they've done that makes you want to turn your back and not want to watch for a while. How many times do they have to come out and say, we're sports entertainment? How many times do they have to come out and say, we're not just wrestling, we're also entertainment? How many times do they have to prove that? A lot, I'm guessing. Hold on for a sec. Yeah, just checking something. And that's the laundry, and that's the washing machine you heard in the background. But, like I said, how many times, honestly, does WWE have to basically push it right into your face and say, look, this is who we are, and this is who we're always going to be? How many times do they have to do that, folks? A lot. A lot. And for some odd reason, people still don't get it. I mean, yes, they have given you what you want. They've given you Daniel Bryan as champion. They've given you CM Punk as the longest reigning WWE champion in the modern era, if not in decades. They've given you what you want. They gave you Dolph Ziggler as the Intercontinental Champion now. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, they gave you an alternative with the developmental program, NXT. What more do you want? Huh? It's like, what more do you want? And the only thing I can think of, again, goes back to what the title of this audio video is. And that is the fact that you guys have been spoiled by overall independent wrestling and somewhat the MMA. And it's nice to get spoiled every now and then. Don't get me wrong. There are times when me and my mom, or my families, or my family and relatives, if we have the money, we go out and we spoil ourselves. I'm not on what we like. I'm not going to deny that. We go out and spoil ourselves. I mean, a couple years ago, we somewhat had the money, just enough, if you will, or just a little over enough. And a few years ago, we went to Disneyland. I went to Disneyland for the first time myself. I have an older sister that if she has the money, she buys yearly passes. Why? Because she likes to go to Disneyland with her family and spoil herself that way. She likes to do that. That's her way of spoiling herself. So it's not a big deal. Me, when I have the money, I go around, now that I have a Blu-ray player, along with the Blu-ray player we have in our living room, along with the Blu-ray player we have in our living room, I go around and I constantly have been buying Blu-rays of movies I like, which I'm looking at right now, a whole litter of them, if you will. And that was my alarm on my iPod again. But like I said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to spoil yourself at times. There's not. But sometimes you get too much of a good thing, and because of that, you always expect everything else to be just like it. You expect every other thing that's related to it to be just like it, because you've gotten too much of a good thing, and you expect the same thing out of other places. If you're a sports fan, and let's say you see, in my case, the Oakland Athletics, the Oakland A's, winning as much as they have, and let's say you're also a fan of the San Francisco Giants, you expect the Giants to be the same way. And at times they are. At times they are. If you're a Los Angeles Angels fan, and they're doing great, on a hot streak, you expect the LA Dodgers to do the same thing. Right? Football. If you're a 49er fan, and they're basically burning up the track, burning up the field every week, you expect it if you're an Oakland Raider fan as well. You expect, the Raiders to do the same thing. If you're a Chiefs fan and the Chiefs are doing well, you expect St. Louis to do the same thing. It's all about wanting the same thing out of everybody else. If you see LeBron James doing a 360 dunk, you expect someone like Kobe Bryant to do the same thing. Because you've been spoiled. You've been spoiled because you've been getting too much of a good thing and you expect it to be the same everywhere else. That is why anytime WWE or TNA or whoever pushes someone that you feel, oh, well, they're just making him into the next Super Cena, or, oh, this is typical, they're just pushing another WWE, another former WWE alumni star, blah, blah, blah. It's all because the fact that you've been spoiled by seeing the up-and-coming stars on the independent scene being showcased more, and giving you the kind of matches you want than, let's say, WWE and TNA are giving you. You expect more of it. You expect that. You want that. And again, this is what makes me and anybody else laugh at the fact that every time someone gets pushed in WWE, let's say in this case Roman Reigns, at first you like him because he's young and he's up and coming, he's the future, and now yet that he's getting pushed to the moon, you suddenly want to turn on him because basically it's like, oh, it's just another John Cena guy. I'd rather see, he's just another John Cena guy. Look, he's getting booed. Why can't they give someone like a Dolph Ziggler the opportunity? Blah, blah. It's all because you've been spoiled. You've been spoiled to the point that you expect the WWE to do the exact same thing. You expect TNA to do the exact same thing. And you want that. You want it. Now again, like I said, there's nothing wrong to want to be spoiled and keep having more of a good thing. But there's also a time and place where you got to realize things are different. They might be relatable to each other, but they're different. Ring of Honor is basically mostly a wrestling promotion, but they have a bit of entertainment in them. They have the sports entertainment segments. Let's not get that wrong. They have that. So they're not too different from WWE. The only thing that differentiates them is they're more about wrestling. TNA is kind of half and half. They're 50% entertainment at times, and then 50% nothing but wrestling. In WWE, it's a mixture. You never know when you're going to get more wrestling or you're going to get more entertainment. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. That's what you guys got to look at. You got to look at the difference between everything else, between everybody else, and what you're focusing on and hoping to get out of. You know, like I said, they give companies like WWE and TNA have given you what you've wanted. They've given you your favorites on top of the world. They've done that. They didn't have to do it, but they did it. And why? Because they know that's what you want. But sometimes when you get it finally, you expect them to continue that trend, even though you should know by reading online through various sources, if you will, that they're not planning to keep the belt on somebody for that long, and they plan to give it to somebody else. I mean, when CM Punk was the WWE champion for as long as he was, and the decision came, hey, we're going to put the belt on The Rock, yeah, there was a lot of Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era fans that were like, yes, The Rock's going to be champion again. But yet there was a lot of the IWC fans that were like, oh no, not this guy. Yes, he's entertaining. Yeah, he's funny, but he's not a pure pro wrestler. Don't put the belt on him. We need to keep it on Punk. Keep it on Punk. Let him have a 2-year reign, a 3-year reign. And it's because you got spoiled. You got too much of a good thing and you got spoiled and you expected it to keep going. You expected it to keep going and going and going. Because you didn't want to accept the fact that WWE was proving to you, hey, we gave you what you want, but now we got to go and change it up a little bit to create more interest. I mean, do you think, honestly, Ring of Honor, when they put the belt on certain people like Adam Cole or Kevin Steen, do you think they expect to keep the belt on them forever? No. I mean, they might give them a year-long reign or half a year-long reign or whatever, or a year and a half, maybe at the longest. But they always end up taking the belt off them because they want to create interest. They want to change things up. They want to create intrigue. Maybe they have plans for that other individual. You know, like with Adam Cole, it looks like they want to make a tag team out of him and Mike Bennett. And sometimes that's not a bad thing. You know, sometimes that ends up being a good thing. The point is, you know, because of overall independent wrestling and somewhat MMA, fans have gotten spoiled so much that they expect the same thing everywhere else, and they can't accept when something is different. They can't. You know, it's kind of like with the Sonic comic, if you will, the Archie comic book Sonic comic. When they did the soft reboot and retcon, a lot of people, fans like myself, because we got so used to seeing the Freedom Fighter characters in the designs they always had, because it reminded us of the days of Sat AM, the Saturday morning cartoon, that when it was decided that they would have what is known as Segified looks, Segified designs, we were like, you know, some of us were like, no, don't do that. Do this, you know, keep them the way they are. Change it back, blah, blah. You know, there were people that weren't happy about it because they were spoiled. They had too much of a good thing. And that's coming from someone that's been a fan for a long time, for the past over 20 years. But it's because of that. It's because of the fact that they were spoiled and they got too much of a good thing and they wanted more of it. They wanted more of it and they weren't getting it. They didn't get it. Instead, they got the redesign of the characters, and that was it. Yeah, they got references, and the personalities stay the same, and all that. But still, it's more like the fact that when the change came, they were upset because they were spoiled because they got too much of a good thing. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be mean or anything. I'm just saying that from a reality standpoint. And that's exactly how fans are with the WWE, the IWC, YWC, the FWC, the TWC, if you will, Twitter wrestling community. You know, they're the same way. They've been spoiled. They've been spoiled to a point that they expect everything to be as it is everywhere else. They expect the WWE to follow suit. They expect the WWE to come out and say, welcome to 3 hours of Monday Night Raw, 3 hours of nothing but pure pro 5-star wrestling classic matches. And it's like you just don't understand. You just don't see the difference. And again, I'm not trying to say this out of, from, and again, I'm not saying this to be mean or offensive or anything else or insult anybody. No, I'm saying this out of a reality standpoint. And we need to realize that, yes, it's nice to get spoiled every now and then. Yes, it's nice to go out and spoil ourselves with nice things. But sometimes there comes a time we have to realize there's a difference between spoiling ourselves with a good thing, with too much of a good thing, and then the kind of accepting things as they are and accepting the differences between similar situations. So to me, yes, it's okay to want to get spoiled. It's okay to want to have too much of a good thing, but sometimes there comes a time when you have to tell the difference. You have to accept the difference between this and that. And I think that's what a lot of fans have to do. But this is why, in closing, again, why I feel, no offense here when I say this, no offense, nothing like that, why I feel independent wrestling overall, indie wrestling overall, and MMA has spoiled fans too much. Well, it's basically spoiled fans with too much of a good thing. So that's all I'm